Give it until 1:01 for us to start. Make sure everyone gets in. Okay, it's 1:01, so I'll get started here. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lauren De La Fuente, and I am the program coordinator on the Real-Time Energy Management Team, RTEM for short, at NYSERDA. And NYSERDA stands for the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. I am very thrilled to welcome you all online today. Thank you all for attending our first RTEM Talks event. I'm very excited to welcome our speakers. This afternoon, we are joined by Jonathan Liang from Memorial Sloan Kettering, MSK for short, Ed Harvey from utiliVisor, and Thomas Ye, the technical advisor to NYSERDA's RTEM program, who will be moderating today's talk. So today, our speakers will discuss their work at MSK's Josie Robertson Surgery Center in Manhattan. Specifically, they will discuss how the facility used their RTEM system from utiliVisor to reduce operating costs and energy waste over the past 6 years. This project between utiliVisor and MSK was actually one of the first that participated in NYSERDA's RTEM program, which launched back in 2016. And so today we are thrilled to look back in time and share with our audience the story of cutting-edge energy management at this healthcare facility. And so the reason that we chose this format of a live webinar is to interact with our audience. We want to know what brought you to this conversation and how we can help you manage energy at your facility, whether it's a facility you're responsible for operating, a facility that you own, or a facility you provide services to. So whatever the case may be, whether you're starting your career in sustainability and building operations, or you have 40 years under your belt, please try to use our speakers as a resource today. We brought together representation from both the customer side and the service provider side, so you can hear a comprehensive account of this project. They have spent the last 6 years doing what so many of us are trying to do, which is to push the boundaries of energy efficiency. They have a lot of experience and they've learned many lessons over the years, which they'll tell you about themselves very soon. So some housekeeping notes. We are recording this webinar. It will be posted online, and the deck and the recording will be sent to the audience in a follow-up email. Next slide, please. I will introduce our speakers now, share our agenda for the next 60 minutes, and we will get started. So Jonathan Liang works as the project manager at MSK, overseeing the implementation of energy projects. Ed Harvey works as a systems engineer at utiliVisor. utiliVisor is a family-operated, full-service engineering company with 4 decades of experience in facilities, operations, and maintenance. And Thomas Ye, our panel moderator, is a recognized expert in energy management, building systems, and utility incentive programs. He has served as the technical advisor to NYSERDA's RTEM program since 2016. So now that you all know about our speakers, we would like to know a bit about yourself. We provided 2 survey questions when you joined the call today. So thank you all for answering those survey questions. I'm going to open up the results and share who is in our audience at the moment based on the survey questions. Let's see. Sal, do you have the survey questions published, or the survey answers published here?
There's a few that are still in progress, so I was going to wait for them to finish first.
Perfect. Okay, we'll give a few more seconds to round out the survey questions and then share those. Okay, I see the poll has ended, so I'll get you those answers. All right. Okay. Let's see, the most popular answer for which below best describes your involvement in RTEM is that you are not directly involved, but you want to learn about RTEM. Okay, that's great. And then next up is you work for an RTEM vendor, system or service. And tied for that is you are evaluating RTEM for your building or portfolio. So that's awesome to learn a little bit about our audience here. Thank you all. And then the next survey question was, you're particularly interested in which building type? Let's see, our most popular answer is all of the above. However, we have a split between commercial office and hospital healthcare for which building type you're interested in. Okay, well, thanks everyone for sharing what your answers to the survey, and we'll continue on here. So I'll move to the next slide to share the agenda. We will start with a presentation from Ed and Jonathan. Then Thomas will lead our panel discussion. And after that, we will answer questions from the audience for 10 minutes and then wrap up in the last 5. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Ed to start his presentation.
Thank you, Lauren, for giving us the opportunity, and looking forward to discussing it. Can we have the next slide, please? Yes, today we are here to discuss RTEM in the healthcare setting with a particular focus on a successful project that utiliVisor has accomplished working with MSK over at the Josie Robinson Surgery Center. Next slide, please. Today we'll do a run through of what RTEM is. We'll discuss RTEM at the Josie Robinson Center, some of the challenges, the successes, and the results of the RTEM project over the last 6 years. Next slide, please. So what is RTEM? RTEM is both a system and a service. The system side, we will either need to put some form of hardware at the site or coordinate with the vendors for the installed equipment. But the system side composes of a live data feed coming from the building in question. The live data feed will go to utiliVisor's system, and utiliVisor has a web portal where the data can be viewed, and the data is manipulated to show various calculations of both critical KPIs and the plant parameters in question. On the service side, we offer continuous energy oversight as part of RTEM. So we have a operations center located in New York City, where the data is trended out and viewed and analyzed by a team of engineers at our operations center. And we look at that information and provide either recommendations on improving operations or some insight into the operations as they occur. That's the benefit of the live data feed, in that we see the set points where they are at the current point in time, and we're able to make recommendations to the site to manipulate set points, change parameters, turn equipment off, switch equipment, and really be a right hand to the operations team at the site. Next slide, please. So why real-time data? real-time data is kind of critical to the function at the site. We are able to help on potential capital projects, justify ECMs, provide baselines, and provide that additional oversight of the points that we receive. A lot of times there are pinch points in a building where operators need a little assistance in optimizing operation to satisfy those pinch points. And a lot of times the operations team needs a little bit more help in deciding how to optimally operate the site. Next slide, please. So over at the Josie Robinson Center, RTEM implementation was a case of right place, right time. utiliVisor was already in negotiation with the Josie Robinson Center ahead of the RTEM announcement. So we actually had to go back and adjust the contract that we had with MSK to meet the NYSERDA demands and to align to receive incentives. Over the course of our NYSERDA project at the Josie Robinson Center, there was a 30% coverage of the installation costs. There was 30% service coverage for the first 3 years, and there was supplemental incentive for the 4th and 5th years at the Josie Robinson Center. It was really a good project that we had at the Josie Robinson Center, and we were able to work with NYSERDA. And NYSERDA was actually a big help in providing the additional incentives and helping to justify implementation for RTEM at the site. MSK originally came to utiliVisor for RTEM based on past experience that we've had working with them and some of the challenges that they were facing at the Josie Robinson Center. Next slide, please. So here's just a brief overview of the Josie Robinson Center. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jonathan from MSK.
Next slide, please. Great. Thank you very much for joining us. So we started seeing patients in this facility around 2016. RTEM was implemented by utiliVisor in 2017, and we started monitoring later on that year. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges that we faced in Josie Robinson is that it's a 24-hour operating facility. Best way to save energy is to turn it off, but can't really do this in this facility. We have joint commission standards, ASHRAE standards, and now local law 97 with other local laws from New York City impacting our operations. So turning it off is not an option, and having RTEM was definitely assisted us in finding energy saving opportunities. Next slide, please. So our facility uses 3 chillers. 2 of them are electric. One is a Tecogen, and we have 3 300 horsepower steam turbines to operate the facilities for heating and cooling. Next slide, please. So some of the successes that we had implementing RTEM in our facility was we were able to reduce the condenser approach. We found that our maintenance was lacking in a sense. So we were able to increase our cooling tower maintenance, our sand filter maintenance, and we were able to bring down our condenser approach from 6 degrees to 1 degree. Another project we did was maximize the use of our economizers. So instead of just using one, we used both our economizers, slowed down our chill water flow, and got the most out of our heat rejection. We were able to maintain free cooling without any mechanical cooling up to 22 BTUs of enthalpy, which is quite significant in my opinion. We also implemented some setbacks for air handlers for unoccupied times and for night setbacks. We found some of our preheat valve operations not set properly, and we made those adjustments to reduce simultaneous heating and cooling. And for one of our most important ones we did was we cleared our chiller surge maps, because the way we were operating initially, I guess that we implemented a lot of protections on the chiller. So once we were able to operate a little more efficiently, having those cleared out increased that efficiency even more.
Yeah, and just to touch base on some of these ECMs, a lot of these are not, groundbreaking ideas. These are things that, maybe should have been in place from the start, but thanks to the RTEM program where we're seeing the live data and the live data and the history is being analyzed at the operations center, we're able to, leverage the data that we receive to pick up on some of these items. Harking to the chiller surge maps, clearing the chiller surge maps, that's an item that comes directly from the chiller panel. So if you don't have experienced people, or the people on site are busy doing other things, answering hot cold calls, running around, handling other items, that's an oversight that might occur. So thanks to RTEM and utiliVisor watching over, we observed that the chiller had never gone below that 50 hertz limit, and we were able to call out that item for the surge maps to be cleared. Same thing goes to the AHU preheat valves, that we found them enabling at 65 degrees. The supply air temperature leaving those air handling units was still meeting set point, so it's not something that would flag any operators' concerns. So we adjusted those parameters. Well, the item number 3 was a real success, a real success story in the RTEM program, the partnership that we have with the site, because, here you have something where you're switching the air in the units. Yes, it sounds simple to make that manual adjustment. It's something that the site management had thought was occurring. We discovered that it had yet to occur. So we actually underwent a test with the operators at the site where, they did a scheduled setback. We observed it. We didn't see any red herrings in turning down some of the air handling units. And then we worked with the site through this manual operation to find those sweep points. And eventually that AHU scheduling was automated. So, now there's no touch. And then with the benefit of utiliVisor and the RTEM system and services, that we are continually watching it. So, we can either set up automatic alerting through our system, or, I'm actually sitting in my desk here on 36th Street, and we log in and we take a look at your operations, and we send out nice little notices to the site, or sometimes we pick up the phone and say, hey, what's going on? We did not see the air in the units turn back last night. The free cooling was another success at the Josie Robinson Center. For those of you not familiar with the BTU per pound measurement, that one, we actually were able to push free cooling above 53-degree wet bulb, if that's more your flavor of measurement, which is very impressive. Some of that is working with the site. Some of that is Jonathan himself, where he was able to push some of the supply air temperatures within the site through a rigorous, cooling coil maintenance and other various forms of maintenance at the site. And the condenser approach, we catch condenser approach in most buildings. That's something that occurs naturally here at the Josie Robinson Center. When we first started the monitoring program in that June 2017, that was the first thing we called out, because in June, your condenser approach should not be that high. So after flagging it for the site, we actually came on site. We did kind of a review. We checked out the sand filter. After they had corrected the sand filter, we still saw a little bit of an increase. And the site developed a pretty rigorous cooling tower cleaning program to address the condenser approach, This really talks to the partnership that RTEM is with the client and the successes that we've had. As Jonathan said, Josie Robinson's pretty complicated. They have 3 separate forms of cooling. They can do free cooling, they have natural gas at the building, and they have electrical as an option for cooling at the same time running a high pressure boiler plant on the roof. So it's not a very large facility. It's how many square feet?
It's about,
150, 170,000 square feet. And there's 14 ORs, there's
14 ORs, about 40 patient care units. We have pathology lab, pharmacy, we have a central processing department. Quite a lot of programs shoved into a small building.
yeah. So it was a real challenge and a real success. Next slide, please. So continuing on the results of the RTEM at Josie Robinson, we'll show some of the KPIs, do a base comparison to before we started monitoring and after, and Jonathan will share some of the insights into that.
Yep. Next slide, please. So this is a nice little comparison of the EUIs year by year. Starting in 2016, when the building was first operating, this was a LEED silver building, actually. We had an EUI of 329. And right as we implemented RTEM with utiliVisor at the beginning of 2017, you can see a dramatic decrease to just under 300. And as our working relationship continued, we were able to achieve an impressive 260 EUI. Now, you see a little bit of a jump when we go to 2019 and on. It's because we decided to, instead of just using 5 days of surgery, the organization decided to open up Saturday surgeries, and that increased our usage significantly because usually we would have the weekends with the ORs off, but this was not the case anymore. And then going forward from 2020, COVID came on. So like all the hospitals, we were doing 100% outside air for proper ventilation. And even from then, we still try to find more savings. By 2021, we got a little bit out of it. And in 2022, we ran into a little bit of issues. We went up a little bit, but not more than 2019 still. We're still trying to stay below that mark. Next slide, please. And here's a graph of how much we were spending for utilities since 2015 up to 2023. The red line would depict where we started using utiliVisor to monitor, and that was roughly around July. So you can see we experienced one winter where we were using a lot, and instantly we started knocking that down right away and continuously improving that building since. So this is a nice little graph that I like to show how much we spend on utilities. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so the big question everybody has, well, how much energy did you save me? So since 2017, this is through into 2023, we had 523,000 total kWh in savings, and we are saving about $53,200 annually in the both electric and natural gas costs. So this is a 14.6 reduction in the EUI. These numbers are actually relatively typical for a utiliVisor project. Typically, we see anywhere from 8 to 20% in utility reduction. That seems like a pretty wide range. It depends on the amount of information that utiliVisor is able to receive from the building. Sometimes a building will have multiple BMS systems. Sometimes a building will be unable to even see the air in the units. You're just sending chilled water out into a loop, and the loop does what it wants to do. So here at Josie Robinson, we really got a nice full picture, and we were able to push the envelope at the site. There's still some items that we want to pursue a little bit further at Josie Robinson, and hopefully we'll able to push down the value a little bit further. And that pretty much concludes the summary of what went on up there. And we'll open it now to comments.
Thank you both. I certainly appreciate all the details that you guys went in. That was great. And certainly I've been part of the RTEM team since the beginning. And you folks brought in one of the earliest projects. So I certainly appreciate your support for the program and the program that can help you. Just a word to the audience. I'm going to start with a few questions. As you can see from the slide deck, the engineer in me is just going crazy. But I want to encourage you to also begin to submit your questions. We got a few already. I think that's great. But keep bringing them in. As I see them build up, I will actually switch over. After all, today's session is really to benefit you. So please start posting your questions now. Jonathan, thank you for that. You went in quite a bit of details on the ECM. So I'm going to ask you to kind of elevate the conversation up to maybe 100 or a couple hundred square foot level, 1,000 square foot level. How does working with Ed and utiliVisor and implementing the RTEM contribute to satisfying the mission at Josie Robinson?
Well, the mission for Josie Robinson is just along with Memorial Sloan Kettering. It's cancer care. And we're trying to provide the best facility and the best environment for our patients to get the best treatment possible. And working with utiliVisor and Ed specifically, we were able to provide that, beautiful environment for our patients and also be energy conscious, how we're spending our energy, how we providing this comfort level for our patients.
Thank you. So basically, there is always some thought out there that it is difficult or impossible to do energy management in healthcare environment just because, like you say before, is operate 24/7 essentially. So just as a follow-up on that question, you folks have always been known as really excellence in energy management, always in a very challenging environment. Can you tell us a little bit about how do you maintain such a high standard in operating these very challenging environments?
Yes.
Like you saw earlier, year by year increase in savings.
Yeah. So I have to thank that to my bosses and my mentor right now, Bob Behringer and John Letson. They set a great precedent in Memorial Sloan Kettering for this energy management in general, or just building operations. They've been doing this for over 20 years, actually over 30, 40 years now, to be honest. So they have a wealth of knowledge. So they set a pretty high standard and we all learn from the best.
I remember meeting Bob. I think certainly is an impressive guy. So question for you, Ed. You guys, utiliVisor, were an early provider of RTEM systems. I remember back in 2016 when we first announced the program. And I remember when you guys were going through the program, I always thought that was interesting for you to decide to really develop the system in-house instead of license the software or use perhaps BIS as opposed to building automation system. So what made you decide to do that, to really develop this solution in-house?
Well, the utiliVisor platform is really built by engineers with operating experience. As some people may know, a large majority of our people come from Maritime College up in the Bronx, where we actually have that hands-on experience. So, we really wanted to not have something that was proprietary and have something that we're able to own ourselves and manipulate as we see fit. That we don't have to always go to some sort of outside development team to re-engineer the platform to make it do the things that we need it to do. So it's really part of the visionary leadership that we have at utiliVisor. utiliVisor, you know, we started out as a a sub-metering company more than 40 years ago. And, you know, seeing sub-metering from an engineer's site engineering viewpoint really helped us succeed. And then leveraging the fact that we're getting data from a building already into a plant environment really helped us out.
I know I certainly familiar with you guys sub-metering business, part of it, but when you went through the program, that was the first time back then when I started to appreciate and your other skill sets. So certainly that was impressive. Let me ask you the question that I asked Jonathan earlier. So healthcare is a very challenging environment. You guys certainly have clients that are broader than MSKCC. So I would just talk a little bit about being a third party, providing not only a software solution, but a service solution. What are some of the challenges in an environment like Josie Robinson?
Well, for an RTEM system to exist in a healthcare setting, there are some privacy concerns. So there was an IT portion of implementation at Josie Robinson, and that we run into at many of the other hospitals where, you know, there's a level of risk management at the IT department that we have to overcome. So that's one challenge that we encounter on the system side. And then on the service side is really the amount of uptime the equipment requires, and those tight thresholds that they need to meet. Airflow requirements, you know, joint commissioning requirements and items like that.
Is that a sort of a specialty, you know, sort of a subspecialty within energy management? You think that it's not just commercial office buildings, you know, certainly we look for things like make sure you don't operate outside the occupied period, make sure you use setbacks and those things. Do you think in a hospital healthcare environment is energy management kind of a subspecialty of energy management?
I would say so, just because you're dealing with so many different areas. You have cafeterias, you have a hotel service, you have ICUs, you have ORs, you have certain demands placed on you. So it takes a unique person to be an energy manager in the healthcare environment.
Well, I think that's you, Jonathan. So let me, we got a bunch of questions coming in already. So I got one more question for you, and then we'll go into some of the, actually I have two questions. Sorry, it's just, these are just pop into my head. You certainly showed us some impressive energy benefits. Was there any non-energy benefits at Josie Robinson?
Well, I would definitely say one of the non-energy benefits was training, basically. So when Ed and his team would be on site, we were able to look at all the data that he's been trending, think about different projects that we were trying to implement, and basically work out the kinks. Instead of just guessing, we knew exactly what points we were trying to hit, which efficiency we were trying to hit, and we were able to scale it up. So definitely additional benefit was training. We were able to get the staff more engaged and just finding more efficiency improvements.
So the staff embrace the RTEM system as well. It's not, hey, this is going to replace me.
Correct. Instead of just looking at this system as Big Brother is watching, they were able to utilize the software to improve and better themselves.
That's great. I'm sure it's not just me wondering, Josie Robinson was a fairly new building, brand new building. What made you guys even thought of want to implement RTEM at a brand new building, you know, brand new system?
Data collection was definitely one of the most important aspects of it, and also just getting another perspective on how to operate. Because just like when you would write your own paper, you would be blinded by spell checks and grammatical errors. Having a different viewpoint on it definitely helps expand your different choices on what you can make.
So you thought about that really when Josie Robinson was, let's say, being commissioned. You already thought about monitoring and make sure that it continues to operate well. In fact, you showed us that in fact, over time, even though it's a brand new building, it operates better.
Correct. And then we were thrown obstacles and we were able to work around it and still continue to find improvements, you know, from additional challenges placed on us.
I thought the fact that you were able to limit the increase when you guys had to take on Saturday. And then COVID happened and you guys still held the performance better than when, you know, before all that. So I think those are real impressive. Ed, we have some audience questions for you. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
You ready? All right. So the first question is, can RTEM provide key performance indicators? Actually, you talk a little bit about this. Dashboards for all building stakeholders, engineer, property manager, portfolio, executive. I'm sure you can't speak to all RTEM, but you can speak to what utiliVisors RTEM can do.
Yeah, for utiliVisor, we get the data from the building, a live data feed, and we are able to host the data on the website. We can make various users who can access the website, and we can generate calculations. One of the favorite ones we prefer for an all-electric building is that beautiful kW per ton, nice and simple. And lately, we've been evaluating further integration of BI tools into utiliVisor, and really providing things that we hear the market telling us that we need. We are developing an API where we can share the data that we collect and some of the calculations that we build into the system with a other platform as needed.
So just to summarize, the utiliVisor RTEM system is capable of delivering KPIs or any type of KPIs and make them available based on the role of the user. So when they log in, if they're non-engineers, they will see what's relevant to them.
Yeah, we can manipulate the system to be that fashion. We have found in the past that the dashboard, they look very nice, but not many people look at them. And people tend to walk right past them and say, oh, we're using more energy today. All right. I guess that's not good. Who knows? And then they walk right by. So we try to move away from the dashboard, but we do have that functionality in utiliVisor. A very popular item is the API, where we're able to share that information with other third-party vendors who can further manipulate the data and do all that great stuff.
Certainly, integrating with BI really allow the insight to be propagated further out into whatever the application that the client would like to have. I have another question for you, and based on this question, I definitely think we have engineers in the audience. Okay, so the question is, I see you mentioned clearing the chiller surge map. Usually, York recommends against doing this, as chillers learn to operate to prevent surges. Was this change due to some change in the operation of the equipment from previous operations? Any issue with surging post clearing of the map?
So over at the Josie Robertson Center, we chose to clear the surge map because we never saw the chiller operate below that 50 hertz level. It is a York YK chiller. They are fairly efficient machines. And when you clear the surge map, you remove any quote unquote bad habits that the machine may have picked up from operating the auxiliary equipment. So if you have cooling tower cycling, you have the condenser water supply temp varying at such a high rate the chiller may think that it's entering a surge state because it saw a large drop in the condensed water supply temperature, and you had that drop in the lift. So the chiller said, oh, wait a second, let's not operate at that VFD set point and that PRV position until ever again, actually, is what happens. So it puts a nice little X on the surge map there, and it chooses not to operate in that state. So when we actually when we took a look at the surge map within the chiller panel itself, and we saw all those X's across that pane, it was really pretty full. Normally you would see it not as full as it was at the Josie Robinson Center, but clearing it out, there was no surge condition after it was cleared. The surge count kind of held steady, and it most likely was during the commissioning stages of the construction when they were manipulating the cooling towers. Often, sometimes we see the surge map is actually kind of full. And we found it could be a number of things. I mean, we found gloves inside the piping. Some people, when they clean the cooling tower, they push everything right into that suction point instead of scooping it out by hand. So you really have to be mindful of who's doing your maintenance and maintaining things.
I think this is one of those that the manufacturer's recommendation is based on an ideal condition. And well, when you take into building all facet of it, including commissioning and functional testing into account.
And I can add on to a little bit about that also. So when we were operating a building back in 2016, we had our chillers running at maximum flow and had our chill water bypass valve manipulating the system. That was basically York saying we want full flow on our chillers, protecting it, no issues. But that didn't allow for any energy savings. So we were able to change our supply air temperatures on our air handlers, reduce the demand on cooling coils. That affected our chill water pumps to slow down. Then we noticed both our chill water pumps and bypass valves both manipulating at the same time.
Okay.
So in order to have the surge map cleared and not have continuous surging, we actually changed it so that the chill water pumps was what's manipulating, and we try to keep the chill water bypass valve closed as much as we possibly can. So we were able to get our chill water operating pressures down a little bit and our pump speed down. In a sense, we were able to make the chiller run from a minimum flow of 600 to a maximum flow of about 850. And that helped with the surge issues too.
Well, I suspect there's a few other folks online that would really benefit from thinking of that way too for their own chillers. Actually, since I'm just going to stay with you, Jonathan. So another question from participant. Great to see that, excuse me. Great to see that ECM emerged. Have the operator taken some ownership of these issues? Or do you instead continue to monitor these issues happening? I guess that's the intent, to say that it'll have the operator take ownership and not let the issue happen again, or this is something that you're catching it over and over again?
Actually, that goes back to Ed and his team coming on site. So when they come on site, they're actually helping our operators, look at these certain parameters instead of having it being told to them. So at the end of the day, we're still preoccupied with a lot of maintenance, a lot of things going on within the building. So having utiliVisor and RTEM programs there, it still helps remind them, because at the end of the day, they're not going to remember everything and be able to do everything else at the same time.
Yeah, most of the site operators or site engineers, you guys are more than 100% full all day, just to fight fire. I have a couple more questions that have to do with MNV. So either one of you want to take a crack at this. So the first one is the 14.6% savings after normalizing for the increased number of surgeries and weather differences?
So that's just the annual value. That's pretty much the way the energy use index works. It's an annual kBTU per square foot. But just going to, that 14.65 reduction is against the baseline. So we're not seeing that every year, we're maintaining that reduction.
Mhm.
And then hearkening to some of the M&V requirements, part of the RTEM program was various submittals to NYSERDA where they would where they would engage with us on our savings calculations and question some of the values and work towards, ensuring that MSK is actually seeing the benefit that utiliVisor is saying that they're stating. There were some conversations that may have occurred
I
between
remember
some
that.
of the people at NYSERDA and utiliVisor. But it was definitely a good partnership to work with NYSERDA on proving out that RTEM does work and that continuous monitoring does help. Just going back to that question you had brought up about, do the operators take ownership over it? Well, it always helps when they know someone's watching over them. So not to say that we're big brother, but we do get the big brother as a bad rap sometimes. So,
Mhm.
Just knowing that there's someone there watching you, knowing that you're going to receive an electric bill at the end of the month, as opposed to having it included in your rent, is going to change
Hmm.
how you use electricity. So,
Very good. And I do remember, um, we actually took your data and we weather normalized it just as a double check. So I can say that question I could actually answer, saying that, yes, we did weather normalize it. And we did compare the numbers to make sure that the numbers are reasonable. So continuing on the M&V thread, so you mentioned that the 14.6% is compared to a baseline period. How long is the baseline period? Is that annual? And then what methodology do you use for M&V?
so we prefer if we do an annual baseline. The prior year, we started monitoring the way we are now. The method that we use for M&V, it varies from place to place. We like to see the utility bill and the utility consumption go down. When you're in a larger facility, you might not be able to see that. So the M&V is often done on an ECM basis, and then we do a check against the utility bill. We've done comparison for clients on the cooling degree days versus the consumption, heating degree days versus consumption. So it's not however you want it, but we're able to work with the client to share our incentives. And often we'll reset the baseline. If we've been with the client for so many years, or if a large number of changes occur within the facility, we have to adjust the baseline. If you are removing steam and going to hot water, we're going to have to change the baseline.
I think that's
Items
very
like that.
important to point out. I think in particular, although probably not at Josie Robinson, the type of facility, I think after post-COVID, I think there's a lot of baseline that had to
Yeah,
get
there's a lot of
readjusted
baseline.
given the condition. Actually, a question just to follow up on that question for Jonathan. How important are M&B as client of the utiliVisor? How important is M&B in the reporting of the saving to you? So it's not just here's a recommendation, do it, great. But if you don't do it, hey, that's your choice.
Well, M&V is very important at the end of the day for a company like Memorial Sloan Kettering, because if we were to get funded for future projects, we have to justify all the projects that we have implemented already and the cost saving and benefits of the previous projects. And having this M&V definitely helps us promote future endeavors and get our C-suite to be more bought into this.
Very good. Obviously, this program at Josie Robinson is considered to be a successful program. What are some of the biggest challenges? This is also an audience question for implementing this successful program.
Well, the biggest challenge was not affecting patient care. We wanted patients to come into our facility and not even realize anything was going on in the background.
Mhm.
So keeping day-to-day activities business as usual while trying to implement all these projects definitely was a challenge, but it was successful at the end of the day.
How about getting buy-in? How's that? Is there, was that pretty straightforward to get buy-in from your organization? That you're going to have somebody that monitor their system and identify opportunities?
Well, definitely getting buy-in is always tough to start off with. So we initiated a program with utiliVisor in one of our different facilities as a pilot. We piloted that out, we tested out, and we were able to prove that this works. Let's try to put this into a new construction site and see what else it can do instead of just an existing building.
So again, I want to encourage the audience to submit questions. I think these questions are great. So keep them coming. Ed, I know that you take whatever data that's available there at Josie Robinson. You based on the building automation system that's connected to the chiller plant. If you had your druthers, what additional data would you want to have as part of the system that will really help you to do more?
So the best way to implement RTEM system, in my opinion, would be to first you start in the central chiller plant
Mhm.
or the boiler plant or the central chiller plant.
Mhm.
After you straighten that out, then you branch out to the air handling units.
Mhm.
And then after you iron out some of the items at the air handling units, you go all the way down to the variable air volume boxes, if there are any in the site.
Mhm.
And now you're watching every single instance across the building to gather that information. So all that information may reside within the BMS, but some of it may not. And there's additional ways to get that information from the system.
Mhm.
That would be the ideal case. We toyed around with looking at occupancy information from security swipes and items like that, but in a healthcare facility,
Probably not
it doesn't
healthcare,
really
right?
it doesn't really pan out too much. Even in the office place, we didn't really find that much of an impact when we look at that type of information.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, so this is a question for Jonathan. How would you recommend to your peers in other healthcare facilities to begin their real-time management journey?
I would recommend you guys to go out and just meet some of these vendors out here and see what they can offer you. But in my opinion, the most important aspect of it is the relationship that you guys are going to have between each other. Because as that develops, you're able to get everyone more engaged and implement stuff that both of you guys haven't been implementing yet or could implement in the future.
Thank you. Ed, I'm going to ask you to answer two questions in one. Okay. Jonathan brought up relationship. Being their tough customer, how did you create that type relationship, that mutual trust? And also talk about how would you recommend another healthcare facility begin their real-time management journey, other than come talk to you? I know that's okay. Aside from that.
So to answer the first question, utiliVisor, we take the feedback. So we're not just issuing recommendations and saying, well, you got to do it. That's the way you're going to save energy. If there's some sort of issue at the site where a potential ECM can't be implemented, or there's some sort of capital work that needs to be done, or some sort of other item had occurred, I take the feedback. I'm not here to be the almighty pressing down on you to tell you what to do. That's fine if we make a recommendation, and even if you go through the steps of trying it out and you prove me wrong, I'm okay with that. I'm not the be all end all. That's just the relationship that we like to cater at utiliVisor, where we're there to help you, we're not there to criticize you. And then if you want to take the steps toward RTEM, it really starts, with taking an honest look at your system in place and trying to implement some metering in places so that you can get that data and you can actually see where you are versus where you think you are or where you're told you are. So, just starting with something that's measurable and not just taking someone who visited the site for a day and said that you're all good and wipe the hands. It's definitely the way to go.
Wow. I know we have some additional questions, but we're running out of time. So in the material that will be sent out, please follow up with these two gentlemen. They can, if you have additional questions that we couldn't cover today. But thank you very much for attending. Thank you both for agreeing to be part of it. Lauren, I'll give it to you to wrap up.
Sure. Well, thank you all in our audience for submitting those very thoughtful questions. Those were amazing. And thank you again to our panelists for sharing your insights with us. And another housekeeping note, we will post this recording. We will send out a copy of the slide deck that was shared today and also a link to the recording when it's ready. And yeah, we just have a few more minutes, so I'll close out here. And you can reach us at any time through the RTEM email. That's rtem@nyserda.ny.gov with any questions or feedback that you have for today. And please stay tuned for the next RTEM Talks event that will be coming to you in the next few months. And thank you all again for joining today. I'll give you back the last 2 minutes of the hour here. So have a great afternoon, and we'll close out the event here.